Well, it's 11:05. We'll start. Please come up to the front. If you have any questions at all, we're going to make this interactive. Welcome, everybody. You are brave souls. You've signed up for a double session on CCL presentations for greater engagement. We needed a double session. If it was just a matter of my talking at you or to you, we could do this in one session. But we're going to practice. We're going to give you the experience of actually engaging with each other and practicing techniques to engage other people. We're actually going to operate on two levels here. There's a play within a play. I'll be demonstrating the introductory talk that was recently developed. I developed it with Brett Cease and with David Kane. And then we'll be talking about that presentation to get you comfortable with it. So first, just to introduce ourselves, I'm Steve Levin. I'm a volunteer based in Northern California. I'm also an executive coach, and I work with many leaders around how to have a greater impact, and often that's about how to engage people more so they're emotionally with you. They're not listening to you, they are participating with you. My colleague Dave Kane, right here on the video, say hi Dave, is the head of the Presenters and Schedulers Action Team, co-lead, and he'll be talking for a few minutes about scheduling. And between the two of us, we hope to give you the tools, the strategies, whatever it takes for you to really engage folks out there and let them know about CCL. So, why greater engagement? I mean, why do we need to engage people? Why not just give them the information and they'll do the right thing? What do you think? Why? Why?
Tried that.
You need their buy. We've tried that. Yes, we have. As an organization, we've been very focused on giving people information, sometimes very detailed information, and what do they do with it? They go, oh yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you so much for coming, right? So that doesn't work anymore. We need greater engagement because we need to stop explaining so much and start getting people to participate, engaging, and taking action. This is a pivot point in CCL's life because the movement is pivoting from awareness of climate change to commitment to do something about it. And so we need to actually transform participants and the way they think, not just inform them. So that means when you speak to a group about CCL, and when we're here together, your goal is not just that they leave with new information, but they think and behave differently. That's a big lift, right? So how do we want them to think differently? Well, first, we want them to move from being vaguely aware of climate change. Oh yeah, I've heard about climate change. Sounds really bad. Hey, who do you think's going to win, the Warriors or the Raptors, right? Not just vaguely aware, but urgently concerned. We want to move them from waiting for a solution delivered by others to becoming part of the solution. And we want them to take not just personal action with light bulbs and electric cars, but to become an advocate for a national policy, for our laser focus. Now, you probably, I know all of you, well, let me get a sense of you. How many of you have been with CCL or the movement for over a year? Okay, that's pretty much everybody. How many of you have given a presentation, formal and informal, where you've engaged people and you've informed them about CCL? Fantastic. So a lot of experienced people. How many people are new to presenting and informing? Okay, a few of you too. It's all good. Everyone here is going to get exactly what they need and exactly what you're ready for wherever you are. Anything that you do that works, keep doing that and see what you can add to it. So, the way you can best participate is imagine that you're one of those folks who you know, and there are so many of them, that as a newcomer to CCL, you're aware of climate change, but you're not yet engaged in action. That's a lot of people, right? Most of the people you talk with in your groups that you present to are not yet engaged. Imagine you're that person, that you're open to getting involved, but you don't quite know how, you're not sure where to begin. And as we go through this presentation, notice what works for you about what I say and how I say it, content and style, and how you can adapt it. So that's the play within a play. Imagine that you are one of these newcomers You're not a cynical person. You're open, but you're not really on board either. You're more like wait and see. Everyone know people like that? Raise your hand if you know people like that. Yeah, who doesn't, right? Okay, good. And then as we participate and have you do some exercises, experiment boldly during our practice exercises. Why not? This is a great place to practice. Everyone on board with that? Fantastic. David, just want you to know I'm moving around, so the video might need to move with me. Okay, good. All right. Now, the brown slides here are commentary slides. In a moment, we're going to begin the sample demonstration. And during the sample, there'll be the white and blue slides. These are more like training notes. And it shows you the structure of the introductory presentation. We're going to start by laying a foundation, then make the case for climate change, get them thinking and reflecting so they're ready to engage, tell them about carbon fee and dividend and focus on the policy, and then call for action. It's a very simple formula, and we're going to go through this one stage at a time. Some of these are quite short. They're simple. Your job is, I said before, imagine you're a newcomer, you're experiencing this for the first time, notice how you're moved, how it affects you, but also have a part of you that's kind of noting what I'm doing and saying that you might want to adopt, adapt, or replace with something better. Okay? So during this first part, our goal is to connect through values, to energize them through your story, and to engage them quickly in some kind of participation, no matter how small. Very modest goals. I have a request for someone who has a stopwatch. I'd like someone to be a timekeeper. And could you do that? Are you reliable? Are you a reliable person? And I'd like you to write down, when I go into presentation mode, start and stop, I'd like you to notice how long it takes, because what I'm hoping to model is a very efficient presentation. When you go in and talk to a group for 20 minutes, you can't mess around. You got to get in, you got to make your points, you got to get out, and to add engagement to that, you've got to be efficient. So once I move into the presenting mode, and Dave, would you hand me my backpack over there, please? Once I move into presenting mode, the stopwatch starts. I want you to see, it's my presenter's cap. So when I'm wearing this cap, I'm presenting to you. When I take it off, we're talking about it, so you know where I am. Play within a play. You time when I have the hat on. By the way, if I start to comment without taking off the hat, tell me, the hat, take it off. Keep me honest. All right? You ready for this? All right, here we go. Now, the frame for this is, imagine that I'm presenting to the Dallas Rotary Club, 20-minute presentation. And what's your name? Michael? Yeah. You're going to start timing when I'm presenting. All right. Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me to talk with you at the Dallas Rotary Club about how we can solve the climate challenge. You know, one of the things I admire about Rotary is your four-way test that sort of permeates the whole organization. You know, is it true? Is it fair? Does it build goodwill and better friendships? Is it beneficial? And we can take these same values and apply them to addressing climate change. We want to know the truth about the science of climate, and I'll share some ideas with you today. We then want to figure out, how do we respond in a way that's fair for everybody? And can we do it in a way that builds goodwill, so instead of making enemies and being so partisan, we're actually working together, and it actually is for the benefit of all, for the planet, so everyone benefits. So I'm grateful that you have this four-way test, and I join you in exploring through that. Now, my wake-up call about climate change happened when I was in my Northern California home near San Francisco, and 200 miles away there was a wildfire that was incinerating thousands of acres of forest. And it completely incinerated the town of Paradise with all of its houses, structures gone. A terrible tragedy for those who were directly involved. But that isn't enough to wake me up. I needed something more. I stepped outside and realized the air was so toxic that for a week I had to wear a mask. 200 miles away, and climate change was touching me, and I realized if it was like a metaphor, if that wildfire can touch me, it's touching everybody. I really woke up and moved from being passively aware to actively engaged in thinking, what can I do to support people's response to climate change? And it brought me here to all of you at the Dallas Rotary Club. So today we're going to cover two topics. What do we already know about climate change? And we know a lot. And what actions can you and I take to maintain a livable world starting now? Right? Okay. So I want to start with a quick poll so I get a sense of all of you, and I know many of you are newcomers to CCL, remember that? How familiar are you with the facts and science of climate change? So would everybody please raise a hand in the air? Just one hand right now, raise one hand. Okay, notice you have 5 fingers on your hand. Show me the number of fingers. If you're a 1, I haven't the faintest idea. If you're a 5, I'm totally up on this stuff, I'm practically an expert. A 3, I'm well versed in the basics. Show me the number of fingers right now and look around the room. See what I see. So you see we got a couple of 5s, some 4s, that's great, some 2s, 3s, 4s, 5. Okay, great, thank you so much. So we have a whole variety of people with different experiences. No matter where you are welcome, you're in the right place. We're going to build on what you know, and hopefully you'll leave with something a little bit more, particularly around what you can do to take action. So, time out. Michael stops the clock. What did you notice? What worked? This is a chance for you to now richly report and notice and observe like what I did or said that worked. And by the way, I won't do and say everything perfectly, but it's something that we can upgrade from. So yes.
Well, you connected your values with the group that you were speaking to. And
I connected my values to the group, and actually what I did is I started with their values and I connected with them where they are. That's right. Yeah, and so you have to do a little research, like what are their values? If you're going to do a presentation, you say, you know what do you all talk about? What do you care about? What do people care about there? What do people, what is it? Yeah, right there.
You mentioned breathing, very visceral, very personal, and able to breathe. And anybody can connect with that.
I gave my personal story, something very relatable. Anybody can relate to that. Yes, what else?
Well, just my opinion that personal stories can be very compelling. That's really the essence of what compels us as human beings.
Yes.
However, in this particular field, it's more like more abstract. You can't really prove that wildfire was caused by climate change. So
it's a very good point. So a personal story is an emotional outreach, not a debate point. Right? It doesn't convince anybody. It's not meant to. It's meant to share a glimpse of who I am, where you can go, oh yeah, I get you. That's all it does. Now, we'll talk later about objections. When someone says, well, was that fire caused by climate change? And a reasonable objection is, I'm so glad you raised that. In this talk, I'll share with you what we know about climate change and its impact on big events like that. So thank you for raising it. I'll come back to you on that. Notice I don't handle it now. I let the presentation handle it. Okay? Anyone else notice something? Yeah.
Just by getting people to raise their hands, you can kind of engage them.
So simple. Get people to raise their hand. Remember? I remember how I started. I said, everybody please raise a hand. Go ahead right now. Raise one hand in the air. Come on. And I'm looking. I say, oh, I'm sorry, you don't have any hands, do you? No, I'm teasing them a little bit. I'm doing what it takes. All I want them to do is raise their hand and put up a finger. How hard is that? Why? It transforms them in that moment from being a passive audience member to being a participant. That's what we want. Yes?
I've been giving this workshop in Rhode Island, where I come from, based on a lot of...
Dave, do we have a mic that we can pass around? Excuse me, David, do you have the microphone? Oh no, we have, okay. You know what, could you guys be with the mics and when you, let's get people on there, yeah.
Yes. Hi, I've been giving this workshop in Rhode Island, where I live, and what I ran into, I love that first part. The comments at the end of the workshops, believe it or not, is some people did not want to be identified when I asked them, and I thought, gee, this is great, I'm evolving.
Didn't want to be identified in what way?
Knowing very little. I've got on 3 of my comment sheets, which I found interesting. I would in a million years never thought that was an issue.
That's a very good point.
So someone suggested, instead of making people raise their hand, be sensitive to them and just have them, think about it. I would never thought that would be an issue.
Well, this is a really great point. I'm going to broaden your point. When we ask people to participate, we're asking them to show up and show themselves. It's true that some people are shy or they're self-conscious. Personally, I err on the side of inviting people to show up because that's the impact I want them to have at the end. Someone who is so shy that they won't put up a finger, is not going to become a climate advocate and call their congressman. They're not going to do it. So I'm not talking to that audience. I'm assuming, I'm believing that every person in this room is capable of and wants to make a difference and is ready if I open the door for them. Now that is a radically different mindset than, there's a bunch of skeptics and I have to go easy on them. I don't want to alienate them. It's not to say that you should bowl them over or be insensitive, but remember I said our job is to transform the way they think. If we're going to be transformational leaders, we have to open the door and invite them in, sometimes give them a little nudge. Like, come on in, I'm serving cookies, right? It's that kind of leaning in. You get me on this? Yeah? Everybody with me? All right, what else? One more, yeah.
I really appreciated
Give her the mic there.
the idea that you said I want to share some ideas with you.
Yeah.
It takes you off of the pedestal of I'm preaching to you.
Absolutely. And I don't want to position myself as an expert because I'm not. So that's great. Yep. And let the experts speak for themselves. I don't have to be an expert. All right. Ready to move on to the next section. Great observations. You guys are doing great. I'm going to put the hat back on. Michael's going to... Oh, by the way, Michael, how long was that first segment?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. 3 minutes. Really? That was short. Okay. Oh, wait. We're not starting yet. Intro to the second section. Now we need to make the case for climate change and why it's important, and we need to do something about it. So my goal, and you'll see if I do it or not, is to present facts boldly and efficiently. It is so easy to get sucked into the science, isn't it? And more slides, especially those of you who are kind of scientifically minded and you like the science and so forth. And here's another slide, and here's another slide, and another slide. We're going for the minimum viable amount of information to make the case. We want to make it personal for them, so it's not just abstract. And we want to communicate urgency, but not panic. Listen to my voice right now. It commands a certain listening, doesn't it? The way I'm speaking, the way I'm punctuating, the way the intonation, but I'm not panicked. Grounded, urgent, wake up, pay attention now. That's the spirit. Let's see if and how I do it. Ready? It turns out that scientists know a lot. 97% of climate scientists worldwide agree on the basics. Global warming is real, it's caused by increased greenhouse gases to the most part, and it's our human activity that's creating almost all the increase. So it's like if you were ill and you went to 100 doctors and 97% said you've got cancer, we got to treat it. You could go to the 3 who say, well, I'm not sure, I want to run more tests, or you might want to think about treatment. That's the way we are with the planet. So the biggest driver of this is, of course, fossil fuels. Look at how the Industrial Revolution, of course, has led to a huge increase in oil, gas, and coal consumption. This is the biggest driver. And what it's causing is for greenhouse gases to become thicker in the atmosphere. So when the sun hits the Earth, normally, a lot of that radiation bounces off the Earth and dissipates in the atmosphere, but when there's more carbon dioxide emissions, it thickens that atmosphere layer, more heat is trapped, and the Earth gets warmer. It's basic physics, it's proven. So what that means is very simple. It means we're up against some daunting challenges. More record-setting temperatures. You notice it's been getting hotter? You've heard about it? More extreme weather events with the sea rising, with more droughts that are more severe, and increasing ocean temperatures. Now, it doesn't mean, as this gentleman asked before, does this mean that that fire was caused by climate change? It doesn't mean that every single one of these is caused only by climate change, but climate change makes these more drastic, more frequent, a bigger problem for us. Let's take a look. How warm is the planet anyway? Now, we've been keeping records or been able to analyze global temperatures since about 1850. What is that, 170 years maybe? 170 years? When do you think the 20 warmest years have occurred out of 170?
The last 20 years.
Actually, no, the last 22 years, because climate does go up and down. So let's take a look at the sequence. Look at how it's gotten warmer. Notice how recent these are, but I've saved the best for last, or the worst for last. The warmest years, the warmest 5 years, are the last 5 years. That's how much our planet is warming. What about extreme weather events? You know, from about 1980 through the 1990s, we were looking at about 300 weather events a year, and these are with climate, geophysical events, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic activity, floods, all the things that, you know, people consider natural disasters. What's happened in the recent years? We're now up to over double that number, over 700 events a year, exacerbated by climate change. What does it mean for all of you, for all of us here in Texas? Well, it's estimated by mid-century of this century, we're going to have over 100 days a year above 95 degrees, about 8,000 heat fatalities every year, and our corn is going to go down by about 40%. So this is really tough stuff to say. It's tough to hear. I don't want to be gloom and doom. And it's time for all of us to say, wait a minute, really? What about that? But how drastic is it? How long do we have? Well, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, is the most prestigious body of scientists from all over the world, and they've estimated that we have 12 years to cut emissions by 50% before the effects are so great that we cannot reverse it in our lifetimes, our children's lifetimes, or our grandchildren's lifetimes. So if you're getting a little worried and concerned, I'm right there with you. Time out, Michael? How long was that?
4.5 minutes.
4.5 minutes. 4.5 minutes on climate change. What did you notice? What worked? Yes. I'll get you a mic.
So one of the things I noticed is as you got to the end of that, it was looking really, really bad. Your voice slowed down and it became quieter.
Yeah. Why did I do that? What do you think? What was the impact on you?
It made it more like consoling. It was like a parent talking to a child and, you know, just talking through something that was really upsetting. So, yeah, this is bad.
Yeah. That's a great point. It's also, you know, I wasn't aware I was doing that. I think I did that sort of naturally because when we slow down, people reflect more. The words don't bounce off so much. They kind of go in and people go, oh, give them a moment. No one minds. Did anyone feel like, wow, why is he talking too slowly? No. Slow down, feel it, let them feel it. We're actually not talking to their brains, we're talking to their souls at this point. What else did you notice?
I noticed that you spoke directly to the issue, the impacts locally to the audience that you were speaking to, and also on this last point, you also spoke more quietly.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, but I believe you. What?
It bounces off them, but if you speak more quietly, they
people lean in a little, don't they? I noticed I did that when you said that. It's really interesting, which means we have to do a little bit of research and find out what is the local impact for this group that we're talking about, right? Okay, what else? Got some more people here?
Hi, my name's Gary. I'm from the Puget Sound area. And
Hi.
I'm an oceanographer by vocation.
Oh.
I've given dozens of talks on climate science, My specialty in oceanography is satellite remote sensing, so I have a kind of a spin I put on my science talk, which I call Climate Science in the Space Age, where I focus on satellite observations. I mean, I think that, for me, that's the tactic that really brings the audience in. With regard to your summary, I thought it was very effective and efficient. The greenhouse effect diagram, I thought was the weaker part of it because, you know, it's a little geeky and it's hard to explain to people what the greenhouse effect really is. Even though it's a fairly simple concept, it's kind of hard to get it across in terms. So I'd almost say if you took that slide off of your presentation, you wouldn't have lost anything important.
Okay, good perspective.
So your diagram that showed the increase in extreme weather events was very effective.
Yeah.
It gets right to people where they live and they work.
Yeah, and, thank you.
So that was, to me, that was the biggest emotional connection.
Thank you. So I love that you're speaking about emotional connection, what works and what doesn't. And I actually fully expect that you will want to adapt this slide deck to make it work for you, for your style, for your audience. If you have a better greenhouse slide, do that. I think there does need to be something in there about the greenhouse effect, but you'll see what works. And regarding the extreme weather events, you notice that there was some drama there. There was a reveal. This is another way of engaging your audience. You don't have to put them into breakouts and have them ask questions. You can ask a question like, what do you think's happened in the last few years? You plant the seed. You click the slide. Whoop, goes the slide. They go, oh my gosh. Question asked, question answered. So it's a rhetorical question, but they're with you. They're participating with you. That's engagement. Thank you. One more comment and then we're going to move on.
Well, I had something I wanted to originally say, but with regarding the extreme weather event graphic, you might then say, and what do you think has happened to insurance rates, homeowner insurance rates following, you know, I'm sure that's gone right up with it, but I know mine has. But I like it, you started out kind of at your regular speed at the very beginning, and then you go, you know, are you kidding me? Wait a minute, you know, what's happening here? I loved that kind of segue because it was very familiar, friendly, and it made a punctuation point of listen to what's coming now.
Nice, nice. So I think you're pointing to something that I think is larger and applies to the whole talk, is if we can, and I you know, as an executive coach, I'm always working with leaders around how they communicate. Instead of making it a presentation, make it a conversation, even if you're the one doing most of the talking. Other people will think it's a presentation, but it's not. If you're in conversational mode, you're saying like, wait a minute, are you kidding me? What's up with that? Right? You're breaking out of this formal presentation mode in order to be in conversational space, even if they don't say anything. Very important. All right, you ready for the next section, guys? Give me a yes or no on that. Yes. All right, let's do it. Oh, wait a minute. Got to do the setup. Now this is the heart and in some ways the most unfamiliar part for you folks if you've been doing the standard CCL presentation, because we have not done this. We have not had people reflect in a non-judgmental way on where they're at. And we haven't given them a chance to express themselves because we're afraid that if we ask them what they think, they'll say, well, I don't believe in this and I want that. We're kind of afraid they won't join us. Nothing to be afraid of. We need people to reflect on where they are and then introduce how CCL can help them get where they want to go. Okay? So pay close attention, see how I do this. You ready for the Michael? You're doing a great job. Now folks, when I showed you some ideas around climate science, I'm just wondering if you could, by a show of hands, how many would say this is mostly new information versus I've heard most of this before? Remember your role of being aware but not committed, the people back home, right? So how many of you would say this is mostly new information for me? Go ahead and raise your hand, okay? And how many people have heard this before? Most of this. Okay, wow. Wow, look at that. Almost all of you, or many of you, have heard this before. So, isn't it interesting that sometimes we can hear things, we can be aware of it, we might even believe it, but it doesn't yet move us to action. Now, in fact, let me do another poll. Time out for a moment. This is an optional slide that is hidden, but I just feel like I want to do it. I'd like you to describe, if you're willing, to what extent you think you are already engaged in climate change work. So let's just do 3 grades. Let's say I'm aware of it, I haven't done that much, or I'm doing some things locally but not nationally, or I'm involved in local action and national advocacy. So those 3 things. So how many people would say, yeah, I'm aware of it, I haven't done much so far? Okay, thank you, great. How many people say, yeah, I'm doing some things locally, but I'm not really involved beyond my own local footprint? How many would say that? Okay, more of you. How many of you are actually involved in national efforts to change? Yeah? Okay, some of you are doing that. Now, here's what's interesting. How many of you feel I'm already doing everything I can and want to do to address this problem? Almost no one. So here's my question. What's the story I tell myself that keeps me from fully engaging around climate change? It's a question that invites a really honest, reflective response. What's the story I tell myself that keeps me from engaging fully? Now I want to say, remember, you're the folks back home. You're not coming to a CCL conference. You're a newcomer. What's the story I tell myself? And if you could, get it down to one sentence. So let's take a moment, and if you're willing, turn to a neighbor and say, what's your story that keeps you from engaging fully? There's no right or wrong answer. There's just your truth for yourself. So let's go ahead and do that now. And actually, I'd like you to do that right now and take it on for real. Go. Okay, everybody. Thank your partner and come on back. Thank you. Thank you. Now, the clock is still running on this section. I just want to say, how long do you think I gave you in your groups? How long do you think? 1 minute.
What? 1 minute?
That was 1 minute.
Right.
Why? That's all it takes. Because I don't want you to come to a conclusion. I want to get you warmed up. That's all. 1 minute. Okay, Michael, you cut a few seconds. Did you do this? You cut it off? All right. Be sure to have Michael in the room as your timekeeper when you give a presentation. All right. So now, again, the play within a play. I'm demonstrating you are, remember, new to CCL, you're aware of but not yet actively involved, so I'm asking you to do that. I want you to answer in that mode. I know you could answer for yourself. Well, actually, I'm already dedicating, I quit my job and I'm a full-time volunteer. No, that's not you. Be the people back home, and let's hear what some of those stories are, and then watch how I work with you. This is the heart of the engagement part. So I want you to watch as I work with you, okay? So, I want to thank you all for sharing with each other the story that you have. We all have a story. We all have a way of thinking that sometimes creates a gap between who we ideally want to be and how we are every day. It's fine. I'd love to hear some of your stories. What is it that you're thinking, saying to yourself that keeps you from being fully engaged in climate change? Who's got one? Yes, please say it.
Between my job and my family and kids, I'm just too busy.
I'm just too busy. How many people can relate to that? I'm just too busy. Yeah, I'm busy too. Absolutely. And it's important that you spend your time according to your values and your priorities. Absolutely. I wouldn't want you to do anything differently. So I'm too busy suggests that, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not sure how much time this really merits of mine compared to all my other commitments. Fair enough. Fair enough. It's kind of a matter of how much conviction you have around this, how urgently you feel this. Who's got another story? Yes?
It just seems so hopeless.
It seems so hopeless or so big. How many people are on that train? Like, this is so huge and hopeless, I don't know where to begin. Yeah, it's really hard to begin something if you can't see a path to success. That's hard. Yeah, what's another?
People don't want to hear it.
Yeah, maybe your friends and families family don't want to hear it. Of course, sometimes we haven't really tested it enough, but maybe you're right. This can be uncomfortable for people, so somehow we need a way to engage people where they actually become curious about it rather than turned off. It's a really good point. What else?
You know, I can't make that much of a difference myself. I'm not an expert in this, but
Yeah.
you've got people who are in power here, they're going to solve this problem.
Well, you've actually said a couple of stories there. A couple of stories, and they're both extremely important to consider, because, I mean, how many people can relate to that? What I do won't make much of a difference. How many people can, yeah? Okay. And also, we have people in charge, they should do something for us. How many people think that? Yeah? Okay. I'm right with you. And when I think about, can I make a big difference? It kind of depends on what I do. You know, I have some choices. So there are some things I can do that won't make a difference. Maybe there are others that could, but what are they? And then this idea that people in power, I agree with you. We have a whole legislature, we have a whole government that could address this if only they had the political will. So it raises the question, is there anything we could do to move that needle? It's a really good question. You guys are terrific at coming up with these stories. No wonder people aren't doing enough on this, right? We're all in this together. Okay, 2 more, 1 and 2. Please shout it out.
I don't want to be ostracized from my community.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to be ostracized from my community. In other words, if I can't find the language to connect with people around this, then I risk disconnecting from them. Then I'm ostracized. I don't want that. I want to be connected with my community. I wonder how I can do that. And one more, last point.
Well, you know, I really think that, you know, this is all God, you know, trying to tell us something.
Yeah, you know, even though the scientists agree, the science is settled, there's always a question of, is this our fate? Or do we have agency? You know, is this God or some other being, or is this just the way it is? And so that would really immobilize you, wouldn't it? It would stop you from doing something if you think that there's nothing I can do. So again, it kind of goes back to that conviction. So you know what I hear in a lot of what you've said, and I ask this of audiences, groups, when I talk about climate change, what I hear is that we need 4 things in place in order to take effective action. If any one of these are missing, as I think it might be for some of you, we tend to not take action. So let me share with you how I think about this. What's the difference between I'm going to wait and see versus let's get going? I think the first difference, and some of you mentioned it, is we need personal conviction. That is, we have to have enough knowledge and clarity and confidence in what we think to make this a big deal in our lives, to take the time. Because it does take time to be an effective advocate, to speak to our community, to find the language. We have to have personal conviction. If we don't have that, we won't get started. But it's not enough. We also need to see if there's some kind of path to success. Like, well, okay, if I begin to do something, where does that lead? Someone here said, you know, I just don't know how I can make a difference. What's my path? Then I need specific action opportunities, things that I can actually do starting today or tomorrow to make a difference. Otherwise, I'm just talking about it instead of making a difference. And finally, I'd like some support. It's kind of lonely out there. I'm the only one in my community. I don't know other people who like this. They don't want to hear it. Some of you said that. So I need somehow to get these 4 elements in place. Now, my own personal story around this is that I felt many of the things that you've said, and there's still a voice in me that has a story that keeps me sometimes from, you know, being fully engaged. But I looked around and I found this organization, Citizens Climate Lobby, that seemed to offer me what I needed. So I want to share with you just a little bit about that. So Citizens Climate Lobby is a grassroots organization with over 100,000 supporters, with over 400 chapters across the U.S., with a single focus of creating a national policy that will slow climate change through a particular solution they have. So what do? Well, first of all, they're the largest, one of the largest grassroots organizations in the U.S., and they have fantastic education and training, shore up my personal conviction. They taught me things I just had never heard before. And once I learned it, it made a difference. They have a roadmap, a path to success to effective national climate policy, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. They have specific action opportunities, ways for me to get involved. This talk is one of them. My coming to you is a very small action I'm taking to say, hey folks, come join me. And they have a lot of support. With over 400 chapters, they organize respectful, nonpartisan participation. And that's why I'm so drawn to this organization. It gives me what I need to disrupt my story and to get me to take action. Okay, time out. How long was that, Michael?
11 minutes.
11 minutes. You know, frankly, that's longer than I would prefer. For a 20-minute presentation, it's too long. For a 30-minute presentation, it's probably okay. And, you know, if I did it again, maybe I could trim, but I want you to notice, was it time well spent? And how did I spend it? Unpack it with me. What did you notice? Let's get some runners with the mics here. Anywhere you want to go, you pick, right here.
You were you talked about the problem, repeated what they said, and then you empathically reflected back to them. You know, I understand that, and of course that opens the nervous system to being receptive because you were non-judgmental, you were empathic, and so you got them right there.
Yeah. So thank you so much. You're actually pointing to like 2 or 3 strategies all baked into one. The first is, whatever they say, I accept it. I never argue. I start with yes. Yes. Now, yes doesn't mean I agree with you completely. It means, yes, I accept what you're saying as valid and legitimate for you. So that's the legitimized part. Then, I find something in what they said, probably not all of it, that I can join and build on. Like, yes, you want to stay connected with your community. You're afraid of being ostracized. Who wants that? Of course, you want to be connected with your community. So somehow, it would be important to find the language that connects you instead of separates you, wouldn't it? See how I'm utilizing their objection in service of moving us forward. This is subtle but highly effective. If you can find the part of what they've said that can help move them forward, that's what you build on. Yeah.
Just to add one thing, what you related to that.
We'll get you the mic. And could we have another intern or runner here? Did she leave? Okay, we have 2 mics with 1 person. Perfect. Okay.
What you did psychologically was really terrific. You addressed their fear and restated it. And oftentimes people have their fears, but they really don't know what they are completely. But once they can state it and have it reflected back, the fear starts to resolve, and you did that. And that was addressing the fear.
Beautifully said. Spoken like a therapist. And what I would say is, and I don't know if you agree with this, but a lot of times people are anxious, which is generalized fear. They're just kind of anxious, you know? And so if we can name the underlying concern and then frame it as something that's addressable, that really works. But you're hitting all the points. Accept what they say, join where you can, and then utilize what they say to move you forward. Who else noticed something in this whole sequence? There's a lot to this, so it's worth unpacking. Yes?
I saw your presentation a few times before I actually did it.
Oh, okay.
And I 100% agree with this. This is when I felt the audience. They were really listening, and they were listening, and I think that was the catch of everything, because it was repeated back. And it was a perfect, logical step. Instead of, let me just tell you about CCL and everything we do, it moves directly into it, and it works.
Thank you.
For that.
Thank you. Well, what you're referring to is, a while back, I worked with Brett Cease and Dave Kane, and we came up with a new introductory presentation. You're seeing, this is it, basically, although we've refurbished it a little bit. And so that's available on CCL Community. I don't do the breakouts in that like I am here. That's why I wanted to do this presentation, this training, because the way you handle the story is crucial. And it's worth practicing, which is why we're going to practice it in a few minutes. Okay. 2 more points here, right there and then up front here. Yeah.
I just want to say that the effect that it had on me was I was imagining myself on the same journey. I was going along with it.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, you know, we are all on the same journey, aren't we? That's the whole point. So when we present around CCL and around climate change, we don't want to be on the other side of them. We want to be on their side. We're all on the same side. So that's our mindset that permeates everything we say. Last point here.
You took the time to respond to individuals. I think that's one of the key issues when we're teaching. We sometimes are so pressed by our time limit, we don't take the time to engage with that individual person. And there's another thing. Sorry, I can't think of it now, but anyway.
Well, taking the time, and by the way, think about it. How much clock time does it really take to respond to each person?
15 seconds.
It might take 15 seconds if you're talkative. You know, it can be very quick. What helps is I have a lot of practice already, and you'll get practice in anticipating what people say, and you kind of know there are certain grooves you can follow in responding that make it very efficient.
I remember the second thing.
Yeah.
When one person says something, other people identify with it. So
exactly.
The question asks, oh, that was a question I had, but I'm not referring to someone else.
Yes. Now, that raises another small technique point. Remember, some of you say, well, people don't want to be outed, and they don't want to look like they're the dumb question and stuff. So what I often do, I think you heard me do it, is say, you know, that's a good point. I know many of us have that question, or I have that too, or how many of you also feel that way? So any one person, one kind of way of thinking about group dynamics is any one person is always speaking for the whole group, whether they realize it or not. Like the collective unconscious of the group is expressed through many individuals. So from my point of view, I don't actually see you as a bunch of individuals. I see you as part of a community that doesn't know that it's a community, and I'm working with the whole as well as with each individual. It's beautifully stated. Okay, I think we need to move on. But you saw some great observations. We're going to come back and practice this section, but how about looking at the rest of the presentation? Oh, wait a minute. Not yet, Michael. Slow down. Number 4. Well, we want to talk about the policy solution. Now, I think you'll see here something that is kind of new to the standard thing, which is don't go right into the solution. Talk about what would a good solution look like, the criteria. Then describe carbon fee and dividend and the Energy Innovation Act and how they meet the criteria. So there's a setup criteria and there's a fulfill. Compare to the criteria. And then pivot quickly to what we really care about, which is building political will. Now, this is another section that can take a lot of time if you let it. My hope is to do it efficiently. However, I realize that many of you will very justifiably want to go into much more detail on the Act. I'm showing the minimum viable amount, but there are many slides in the deck, they're hidden here, that are available to you to go into more detail. All right, you ready, Michael? By the way, what's our cumulative time for the whole presentation, do you know?
18 minutes.
We're 18 minutes in, so if you have 20 minutes, I've gone too slow. But let's take a look. So if that's the problem, and we know that everyone has a story that might keep them from engaging, we have to say, well, what would even a good solution look like? And it seems to me that it's not just one thing, there are several things we want from a climate solution. So the first is, it has to drive large-scale change quickly. Some of you said that. What can I do by changing light bulbs, by buying an electric car? It's good, but we need a solution that will be big and be big and quick. Second, a lot of people, including me, want to use incentives to support free choice rather than have big government tell people what to do. So I like a solution that helps me make choices that are in my interest because the incentives are right. I also want it to be fair, so people who are most disadvantaged don't bear the brunt of fixing this. And I want it to be sticky or durable, so the next administration can't on a whim just change it because the people are really invested in it. And of course, most important, I want it to be healthy for the planet. That's why we're doing this. And I'd love it to be healthy for the economy. Now, that's a pretty tough list to meet. And the question is there any approach that can actually fulfill all of these criteria? Well, I wouldn't ask unless I thought there were one. And I want to share it with you. It's called carbon fee and dividend. And it works like this. We start by, we place a small fee on all carbon emitting energy, coal, oil, and gas, fossil fuels, at the source. When it comes out of the ground or out of the well, we charge a fee. It's small and it goes up every year. And we collect all that money and we redistribute it back to families. It's so simple and elegant. Now, what happens when we start charging a fee on carbon? Well, a couple things. First, if I care about saving money, I'm going to seek lower carbon alternatives. Now it makes sense to carpool or take a bus or buy an electric car, whereas before it didn't because gas is getting more expensive. Also, manufacturers of every stripe, not just energy companies, but all kinds of companies are now invested in lowering their costs and providing lower carbon alternatives. So we're creating the incentives for people to move to a lower carbon footprint. Now, when we collect that money and we return 100% to households as a dividend, what happens there? Hey, suddenly I'm getting $500 a month. Now I could spend that money on gas, or I could save some of that money by switching to non-fossil fuel electricity for an electric car, and now I have more money to spend on what I really care about, maybe gifts for my grandkids. So by collecting the fee, the whole system starts to move towards lower carbon. Now, is there a solution that embodies this? Well, yes, and the question is, are we ready for it? There's a solution called the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. It has over 40 co-sponsors in Congress, including Republican support. It is an act that we can see is the first bipartisan solution that has earned the full endorsement of Citizens Climate Lobby because it embodies this carbon fee and dividend where we charge a fee, we return the money, and it adds a couple of things to make it politically viable. So this particular act adds a carbon border adjustment so that companies that don't charge a fee, countries that don't charge a fee can't send their cheaper imports and take away from American manufacturers. And it limits regulations in certain limited sectors so that these incentives have a chance to work. Those are the main features. The benefit is that within 12 years, this act is believed to lower our carbon emissions by over 40%, which is not quite as much as the Paris Agreement calls for, but it's a huge step along the way. And of course, there are other benefits. Not only is it effective in reducing carbon, but it's good for people. It puts money in their pockets if they move to a lower carbon footprint. And it's more healthy for them. We're going to be saving lives because we're going to be reducing climate change. It's actually good for the economy. Many people don't realize this because as we support lower carbon fuel sources and industries, it creates over 2 million jobs within a limited period of time. It's bipartisan, which is essential to get it passed, and also good for all of us moving together. And it doesn't grow government. It doesn't make government bigger because the money goes back to households. So there's a lot of reasons to support this. And in fact, there's increasing support in Congress as it slowly adopts and adapts itself to think about handling climate change. The challenge is building the political will to act. That means we have to get our elected legislators all of government, to be thinking more about climate change and being ready to take action. Now, what do you think the odds are in our current environment that if it were put to a vote, the Congress would pass this law? I estimate it at 0. Maybe I'm being a little bit generous here. 0. Why? It's not because this is too aggressive or because this act is, in fact, a lot of Republicans, Democrats, they like this approach, particularly using incentives and being good for the economy. It's because we, the people, all of us in this room, have not yet built the political will, so they'll take action. So now we come to the heart of the matter here, which is coming up in a moment. Okay, time out. So what did you notice about this section?
It's a little boring
It's what? It's boring?
relative to the other sections.
It is, it's a little geeky, it's a little boring. I'll tell you frankly, I am more of an expert in presentations than I am in the bill. So you guys could probably do a much better job by highlighting and punching certain parts. But it is geeky, and that's why I want to do it quickly. What else did you notice?
The thing I liked about it was that it wasn't data heavy.
Yeah.
You focused on the ideas behind the bill, and that's been particularly helpful to me because I drill down into the details and the data, and it doesn't really help.
Yeah, it's easy to get sucked into that. Now, it's wonderful that you're prepared to go into the details, but let it come up during the Q&A or selectively reveal it rather than assume that they want it, because you know what? They don't want it, usually. What about the criteria? Anyone notice anything about that? How the criteria were constructed, and was it useful to have that? Or should we skip it? What do you think?
Oh, they were fantastic.
Okay, let's give the mic here. She said I was fantastic, so we got to give her the mic.
No, that setup was essential because the rest of it is somewhat dry, but that's the anticipation and excitement. And if we wind back to that, so we can get all that we, especially the part where we need a big solution because we all feel so helpless in the face of it with our little actions.
There you go. So the strategy here is you start with the response you want and you reverse engineer and develop the criteria that will naturally lead to the solution. That's what we did. What else? Yeah.
Part of the conservative caucus, and I loved it that you worked in values that are urban appeal. You said, I like a solution that provides incentives for individuals to make good choices rather than relying on big government.
Yeah. And now we have a range of political views in the room. Most of CCL leans, of course, heavily Republican. Oh wait, maybe not. But I can find a part in me, even if I'm a very left-leaning, progressive, Democrat, whatever, I can find the part in me that joins with those values. Find the part, always speak sincerely and authentically, but don't box yourself in to a limited set of values when really you can relate to a lot of values. And that's what I did here. Yeah. More folks, different folks? Yep.
I think this is all incredible. I'm learning so much.
Sorry.
I think this is all very incredible. I'm learning so much. I just wondered with that very last sentence where you said we are not creating the political will. It almost felt like we were being blamed a little bit or criticized, and that didn't feel as good.
Thank you so much. I think there's room to upgrade that. What could we say instead? Anyone?
Do you think we have enough political will?
Do you think we have enough political will? Do you think there's enough political will in Congress to pass it? No, there isn't. So you don't have to blame them. Any other response that we can,
Ask a question. How can we?
Yeah, you can say, so if there isn't enough political will, the question is, what can we do about that? I just wonder, how can we, all of us, take part in building the political will that's necessary? It's a great question we need to explore. And I have some ideas for you. Great, thank you. All right, a couple more comments on this section. And behind you, there's someone too. Go back there, yep. Go ahead.
You took the initiative to
state for yourself rather than it coming from the audience that this bill is not going to pass now. And so when people in the audience bring that up, it really brings the whole group down by mentioning yourself and giving a way to address it.
Right.
Motivation.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So that's called inoculating ourselves against criticism. We inject a little bit of poison into ourselves and it prevents us. So when you own the objection, you preempt it. And you say, you know, how likely is this to pass? 0. There's no way this is going to pass right now. Unless something changes. See the pivot? Unless something changes, and now I'm pivoting towards the future. So I'm very willing to grant the legitimacy of any objection as long as I know how to pivot towards a better future. Last comment here. Yeah.
So good. Thank you very much. Oops. There we go. So good. These are very small points, but maybe important. When you were speaking, you mentioned the word redistribute. In my experience, there are some members of Congress that would be like waving a red flag. But
yeah.
The slide said return. So is it all right to say return?
Absolutely.
And then the other point is that, yes, I think it is a little dry and maybe some color in the slide of the policy and maybe having each point come forward one by one.
Could do a build.
Yeah.
Yep, you can certainly tweak that, do a build. These are great things. Anything you can do to make this more engaging is great. Okay, tempted to move on. Who has a very last point they really want to get in? Raise your hand. 2 people, we'll do 1, 2.
Sorry, this is a little nitpicky, but just one thing I want to address is that the upfront 50% IPCC recommendation and that 40%. I'm from New York City, so I'm much more left-leaning place. I feel like that's going to make people kind of shut down a bit. Oh, this isn't the right policy. It's not going to get us there. We're still not meeting the deadlines. And I think we just might want to check.
And how would you respond to that?
Well, I was going to say I've been reading up some of the background material on the bill, and there was one kind of fact point mentioning that our goal is really only 1 year behind, so we can hit it by
nice
2031, something like that. So maybe reframing the upfront, just so there's not that dissonance, could be helpful for a lot more blue places.
Great. So I'll take your broader point here, which is definitely work with these slides, change them, adapt them, so that they match your what you can stand for authentically, and they help people move into the future. Yeah, it's imperfect, it can be improved. Last comment, and then we're moving on.
It's related to the prior comment. This has been extremely helpful, and I found myself experiencing the reactions to this in many people in my community. It's a very liberal community. Some people can't stand the idea of not using the dividend to build renewable energy infrastructure.
Yes.
People want demonstrations in the streets daily. And so how do you handle placing the solution in a larger climate movement context, or do you?
Well, thank you for raising this. It's a really vital point. You know, before we had a bill in Congress, we could gloss over the specifics and say, well, there's going to be a lot of sausage making, maybe this, maybe that. It was much easier to speak about our approach because we weren't tied to specifics, and so we could enjoy the ambiguity of our solution. It's harder now because anytime you say, and this is what we propose, people will say, well, I object because of this. This is why the Al Gore organization has shied away from endorsing solutions, because they know that they can get people on board much more easily around the problem than they can around the solution. As we move towards the solution, we need to be prepared for people who have objections. I would say the principle of engaging people still applies. A big point here is, remember, you are managing the conversation. Because someone raises an objection doesn't mean you have to pursue it and get distracted. You want to acknowledge it. So what I might say is, you know, thank you for raising that. I have heard this before. Some people feel very strongly about using this, redistributing, or what do we say, not redistributing? What is it? Returning the dividend and using it for social justice causes. And there's a part of me that wants that. Other people want to actually bolster the economy and help small businesses be productive. And I think that's you know, that has some merit too. And actually, there's 100 different ways that people would like to charge a fee and spend it on whatever they care about most. What we're suggesting is none of the above, and to give it to families and let them choose. Why? Because it's something we can agree is, you know, meets our criteria, meets our principles. Some people may want to spend that money on social action. Some people might want to support businesses. This act is broader, more inclusive. It says, come on, folks, let's do this together. That's how I handle it. But you might have better responses, and we're not going to discuss those now. Okay, let's move on. We're almost done, and then we're going to get into some real practice. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry.
Set it up.
Set it up. Thank you, Michael. Michael, I need you. You're on the road with me. All right. The call for action. Now, we're used to having, when I saw the CCL presentation, I was really shocked that the call to action was come to a call and learn more. Join an introductory call.
Find out more.
Find out more. It's a good call to action, but I felt that we can ask for more, and we should, because we should assume that people are ready to do more whether they know it or not. Now that's a strange thing to say. If we wait for them to ask, well, what can I do tomorrow? We'll be waiting a long time. So we need to engage them. So I assume they want to engage. I want to invite them to become an advocate. We do think at this point, emphasizing that they call their congressperson is an easy first step, so we want to have that right up front. We want to describe ways they can participate through CCL and then ask them to choose the right next step for them. So with all of this, what is your action plan? It might be different for each of you, but I want to suggest a couple of things that may really appeal to you. The first is continue to do what you're doing and act locally. Whether that means reducing your own carbon footprint by changing light bulbs or by carpooling or buying an electric car. This is wonderful. And even though it may not be sufficient to reverse climate change by itself, it gives you the moral authority to ask others to do more. It's wonderful. The other thing you can do that's so important is share what you know. Remember, a couple of people said before, well, I'm not sure my community wants to hear it, I don't want to be ostracized. It's so important that if you learn something here, if you're inspired by an idea here, that you share it with your friends, with your families, because we need to make this conversation alive and vibrant. So please continue to do this. I know a lot of you are doing this already, but I want to ask something else. I wonder if you're ready to become an advocate for an effective national climate policy, because I believe, and Citizens Climate Lobby believes, that this is what's really going to move the needle. Reducing our carbon emissions by 40% would be a huge step in the right direction that we cannot achieve without a policy change. So, one easy thing to do is call your members of Congress. Share your thoughts and support for climate action. And CCL will provide the resources, the scripts. We'll even remind you to do it if you want to. And you could do this on your own, of course, but if you work through CCL and your chapter, we'll help you to do this. It's fast, it's easy, it's effective. It's sort of a good first step for everybody, because that's where the action is, influencing Congress. The other thing you can do is magnify your impact through CCL. We have a weekly call, an introductory session that will give you more information than I could in this short time. It's every Wednesday. Here's the link to it. And you can participate with your chapter. With over 400 chapters, it's likely that you have one in your community. And you can do all kinds of things. You can join the grassroots outreach efforts at farmers markets and film screenings and talk to people about this. You can engage local leaders and get them to endorse this approach. You can write letters to the editor or op-ed pieces. We're actually doing thousands of those every year, and you can be a part of that movement. You can even meet with Congress. Did you know that every year, I know you haven't heard about this, there's a national conference in Washington, D.C., I think it's this year in June, right about now, and 1,000 volunteers are going to swarm Capitol Hill to meet with Congress. You could be one of those. I was, and it really made a difference for me. So, those are some options. what I'd love to do is have you talk with your neighbor and discuss what's the right next step for you. Is it calling your member of Congress, or attending an information session, or joining with your chapter in some of these, or is there something else you want to do? So please take a moment, although we're not going to, and do that now. And just for about 1 to 2 minutes, share. And you know what? I know you might want to discuss what you heard and so forth, but really ask your partner, what will you do that is just right for you? Each of you could ask your partner that and answer it. We'll be there. So, what did you notice about this sequence, the last chapter of our story? Yeah.
You give people so many good suggestions in terms of what they can do that sometimes people don't know how to, they don't know how to engage, and there's so many different opportunities. Even if you don't want to be in a group of people, you can stay home and CCL provides that information.
Great. So there's two tails to this one. On the one hand, we want to provide very concrete options and a variety of options, so there's something for everybody. On the other hand, we don't want to overwhelm them with a whole laundry list of things and then they do nothing. So the basic approach is more limited and more focused, referencing other options. The extended approach gives more choice, but it could be too much, so you choose. Thank you. What else?
You got them to verbalize to their neighbor what they were going to do.
It's so important that they don't just think about what they do, but they say it. The research shows that if you think about what you do, I don't know the numbers, but it's like, 10% of the people follow through. If you say it aloud or you write it down, you get another 20%. But if you actually tell someone else and you say, I will do this, and there are ways to make this a little more rigorous, the follow through is much higher. So be sure to include that interaction. Okay, we're up here and then we're going to move on to practice. It's going to be limited, but I promise practice, so I have to deliver. We did the debrief. This is, I think, the core thing to practice. Practicing the presentation, how fast it goes, you can do that on your own. But what I'd love to do is look at this sequence of 4 slides. For how many of you is this new? How many is familiar? That's just a little setup piece. The second one is, what's the story I tell myself? Then reframing that into, there are 4 things that are needed, and here's how CCL delivers. So to make this a very short practice, what I'd like you to do is every person here think of a reasonable but not impossible story that someone might raise, like I don't have time, or I'm not sure I can make a difference. Pick one. Turn to a neighbor and say that, and neighbor, please work with that. Respond with 2 or 3 sentences. Somebody raises a story. I don't think Congress is ready. You respond in a way that accepts and legitimizes what they say, and then points them towards how we can make a difference. You don't have to follow all this. The basic idea is whatever their story is, you're going to accept it, and you're going to work with that in moving them towards CCL. So let's take a few minutes to do that. To do that now, turn to your neighbor. Say, here's my story. Neighbor, respond. Figure it out together. How do you respond to the story? Go ahead and do that now. One of the keys to a good presentation, a good conversation, is managing your time. So don't do what I do and go on too long. But, I always promise groups. I work with hundreds of groups every year in my work, and I never promise to get through everything. I just say we're going to use the available time in the best possible way. So I think we've done pretty well with that. What did you learn in just this last couple of minutes of sharing a story and responding? What did you notice? What worked? Yeah.
I think it's enormously important to accept what they say and match your own story, which we all have the same feeling.
Yeah.
I'm sure to some extent, helplessness, nothing works, nothing's happening, and just to talk about that and get that out. And then I think that I love what you did about teeny baby steps, because it's important to help people feel successful in this. And even if it's about changing their light bulbs to LEDs, that's a little tiny step that helps them to get rid of their carbon footprint. And
Yeah.
I think starting small, validating whatever they do is the most important thing, so they feel successful.
That's a great point.
Don't feel overwhelmed, because this topic is so overwhelming.
It can be overwhelming. So important to legitimize every small step. The one thing that I think is unusual here is to take those small steps and say, not only you're reducing your carbon footprint, but you're giving yourself the moral authority to ask our leaders to do more. And that's that pivot towards national action. 2 more comments, and then I'm going to have Dave wrap it up.
We've talked a lot about content today, but I just wanted to make a quick comment about your style too. I think your style is so easy to listen to, and I think that's one of the reasons you're very effective. To me, when a style that's very popular these days is what I call up-talking, where people ask a question at the end of every phrase, and when you're listening to that, it makes you very anxious. And you don't do that, so to me, it's very easy to listen to.
Yeah, right.
So I don't do that? Just wondering. Thank you. And you know, I have a lot of practice, but you can have practice too. And I think what's going on for me is, if I know what I want to say, I try to not just say it out there in the room, I try to deliver it right into each person. I think that's some of what you're pointing to, and we can all do that. We can see each person here is eager to hear what we have to say, and I'm going to hand deliver my message to you and you and you. Thank you. Okay.